Mm.
I mentioned this to you earlier, but I think it's so fun to bring on dads who can share their experience as a girl dad, but also give some value to the audience on a subject that could help them with their journey of fatherhood or just being a great dad to their daughter in general. And
Yeah.
I think your background with breath work and clean air is so valuable
Hmm.
and something that we haven't really chatted about before, but it's extremely important. Especially when it comes to emotional regulation. I think there's
Yeah.
so many girls out there so many daughters who are dysregulated or anxious or have situations that they're in where breath work or maybe even clean air could be a great solution for fathers to kind of offer. So,
Yeah.
would love to chat about that a little bit and how just hear from you on how clean air and proper breathing or breathwork techniques can actually enhance or affect a child's mood and regulation.
Amazing. I think you mentioned something at the piece that kind of pinged something inside of me as far as, a lot of girls maybe being dysregulated. Um, that's a learned behavior, from people they're frequently interacting with. We have mirror neurons in us and we frequently mirror the environment, right? I mean, so much of what I see,
Hmm.
I've worked with lots of parents. Nervous system dysregulation is just kind of the soup du jour of our society. Everyone's over caffeinated, overworked, like they don't have the tools, they don't know them, it's really no fault of most people's anyways. Um, I think the single biggest thing that's impacted my fatherhood journey was like, being introduced to these tools and really using them deeply. I mentioned breath work at the start. That's just one of many tools, but it was just a very reliable tool I could use on my own to deepen my ability to regulate myself and become more aware of the things that were causing dysregulation. And for me, I mentioned working in the fire service a lot of the time. I'm a very type A guy. I've had decades of like, very intense sort of work. I'm the guy that's running into a fire when people are running out. For me, I was very much wired to respond to things, to fix things, to make things better. And thank God I became aware of that clearly in me at the time of having my first daughter. I was doing a lot of my own inner work when my first daughter arrived. So it was kind of like this, like I mentioned, thrown into the fire. Um, you know, uh, that type of patterning, especially with females, and I've got three daughters and a wife, like is so not helpful. And I didn't know this like at all until like I got introduced to these ideas of like, the differences of the masculine and feminine and,
Yes.
what's required something that came up for me as you were sharing that too is like I've heard this idea, the feminine desires containment in a way, like a presence to
Mm.
ground into, not control, but something to relax into. Um, I don't think I could have provided that like 7 or 8 years ago. Um, before doing a lot of this work and understanding my patterning and bringing in tools to be able to, I think, deal with myself so I can simply just be a presence for my daughters,
Mhm.
and how did breath work allow me to do that? Um, it wasn't just doing box breathing. It wasn't just sitting there doing box breathing and like, wishing things would get better, like kind of calming things in the moment. It was using this active conscious breathing as a tool to really get to know what was going on inside of me, how I was raised, what was I given as far as like conditioning and seeing how that was interacting within my world, especially now being a father. Cause I imagine
Mhm.
anyone that comes on your podcast knows your children are like just uniquely programmed to trigger you and all of your stuff, you know? And I remember being at a show in 2017, Dr. Shafali was there and she's really become like quite a presence online. She delivered a piece of information saying your children are going to be mirrors for all the areas in which you need to grow. And I remember hearing that, and this was 2 years before we had kids. I just like, it was one of those moments where I fell back in my seat. I was like, oh my God. Not only could I see that for myself with my parents, like just, it was like a flash of all these moments in my childhood with my parents' interaction, but I'm like, that's going to happen when I have kids. I can just feel that. And I've like, it was right around that time, 2016, 2017, like where my wife and I started doing some inner work that allowed, I think, me to arrive at this place where I'm at now. And I do not have it all figured out. Oh my God. Like every day with three daughters under six, it's just a constant barrage of emotional, just emotionality.
I'm sure.
So that's why I'm really grateful. Again, breathwork was a tool for me to do a lot of my own inner exploration, and with awareness of it, and a lot of support to begin to let go of some of the emotional triggers for me and some of the accumulation from the past. But, I mentioned box breathing isn't going to do the trick, but it's also a good tool. So now, like, I do use these breathing techniques, like in the moment where I'm like very active myself emotionally in the presence of my little children. So I can use these
Mhm.
things to not react, to simply be there. And this has just been such a gift, So I
Yeah.
think that's one thing I would advise people, whether um, you're planning to have children or you already have kids, it's not too late to begin doing your own inner work so you can become more aware of, what is inside of you. What have you, you know, learned from observation, accumulated, people talk about maybe karmic debts or ancestral stuff, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. You've got stuff inside of you. Find a way to begin to explore that in a way that doesn't involve your children taking
Hmm.
the brunt of it, and um, breathwork has probably been the most reliable way um, for me that I found to
Mhm.
do it. But there's many other paths. So um, yeah, so that's been a big piece. I think that I want to just invite people into that world as a
Yeah.
as a possibility.
I love it, and I think, you're sharing great examples as to how breath work has helped you become a better father, a more
Hmm.
present father,
Hmm.
and show up for your daughters the way that they need you to. But
Hmm.
there's also the other end of it where you're able to teach your daughters how to emotionally regulate, and it's something that's beautiful because it's free. You
Hmm.
can do it anytime,
Yeah.
and they can learn how to calm their emotions and reach homeostasis, especially in times of heightened emotions or, um, fear or sadness. My husband's really good about this. If I'm
Hmm.
like crying or having one of those moments where just everything feels like it's crashing down, he's like, "Okay, breathe," and then all of a sudden the crying stops and I feel
Yeah.
better instantly. And it's crazy how much of a difference it really does make. And this isn't something that my dad we've ever really talked about. Like he's
Hmm.
not a breathwork guy. I think everybody could value from it though, and I'm excited to bring this topic up because I'm sure there's dads out there who are open to this idea but just haven't really thought about it or
Yeah.
explored it.
I
So
love
yeah.
that.